Our guest speakers this morning are Ellis Vance, Kyle Osborne, and Tai Tai Nguyen. Ellis, he, him, us, a retired educator, has been a part of the UUCF congregation for over 20 years. He is active in the adult religious education and social justice teams and was recently elected to the Board of Trustees as Vice President. Kyle Osborne, they, them, is a philosophy major at Fresno City, aspiring Unitarian Universalist minister, and general busybody. Tai Tai Nguyen is a mother, wife, nurse practitioner, yogi, and occasional church singer. Surprisingly, she's found herself living in Fresno longer than anywhere else, and it's mostly her husband's fault.
Buenos dias, and good morning. I'm happy to be here today to share with you, including the words of award-winning authors, what a small group of our congregants have been experiencing to bring us closer to living out our congregation's vision of becoming a truly multicultural, multiracial, beloved community. A community where all folks, no matter the color of our skin, feel safe and welcome. When fellow adult religious education team member Riva Jamont and I embarked on our first book discussion offering 2 years ago, we didn't realize the impact it would have on us or on those who signed up for the class. It has been an incredible journey of learning, one of changing perceptions and previously held beliefs and opinions. It all started with Mistakes and Miracles, Congregations on the Road to Multiculturalism, a Unitarian Universalist Association's all-church read. As stated in its preface, for transformation to occur, we all need stories of people who are working to dismantle this culture of white supremacy. Stories that reveal what it takes to go against the grain. We need stories of people who are striving to create new ways of being together, ways that truly merit the name beloved community. Mistakes and Miracles challenged us to bring about those changes in our own congregation and our community. Next came Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. DiAngelo pressed us to talk about racism and the ways it has personally shaped and affected our lives, both as white people and people of color. After finishing White Fragility, our committed nucleus of 10 to 20 participants realized that our journey was not over, that our quest to becoming a more multicultural, beloved community, in fact, was just beginning. So, White Fragility was followed by Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. Says Kendi, we are surrounded by racial inequity as visible as the laws, as hidden as our private thoughts. The question for each of us is, what side of history will we stand on? Will it be a racist, someone who is expressing an idea of racial hierarchy, or will it be an anti-racist, someone who is expressing an idea of racial equality, who is actively supporting policies that lead to racial equity and justice? Kendi says, racist and anti-racist are like peelable name tags that are placed and replaced based on what someone is doing or not doing, supporting or expressing in each moment. Being an anti-racist requires persistent self-awareness, constant self-criticism, and regular self-examination. Well, our next read was Layla Saad's Me and White Supremacy, Combat Racism, Change the World, and Become a Good Ancestor. It asked us to not only read and discuss, but also journal, and then come together to share what we had written and were thinking. It was a 28-day process designed to teach, especially those of us born with white privilege, how systemic racism works and how we can stop contributing to white supremacy in the world. Says Saad, this is a tough journey that pushes readers to examine the often hidden mechanisms of white supremacy and systemic racism in our lives. This is about learning how to identify how you're seen in the world and how you see yourself. Well, next came Ojiamo Oluo's So You Want to Talk About Race. Says Oluo, these are very scary times for a lot of people who are just now realizing that America is not and has never been the melting pot utopia that our parents and friends told them it was, and for those who are just now realizing how justifiably hurt, angry, and terrified so many people of color have been for so long. She says, we must never forget that without systemic change and without efforts to battle a myriad of ways in which systemic racism impact people of color of all classes, backgrounds, abilities, our efforts at ending systemic racial oppression will fail. Oluo challenges us to learn more about ourselves, to see ourselves and our actions more clearly so we can move toward the person we truly want to be. So that brings us up to the present. We have been on a journey that has been a rich, life-changing experience for those that have made this commitment of reading, discussing, and self-reflecting over the past 2 years. However, it must be said, and we believe, that to truly become a more multicultural, beloved community, this journey of change should be spread beyond our small group of congregants. So we invite you to join us at the end of this month in October for our next read, Oluo's Be a Revolution, How Everyday People Are Fighting Oppression and Changing the World, and how you can too. Says Oluo, all around the country, people are affecting real change with small actions. Change that improves the lives of people of color in their towns and cities and weakens an oppressive white supremacy system. So start talking, not just about problems, but about solutions. We can do this together. I agree with Oluo. I am confident that together we can journey towards spiritual wholeness, building a more diverse, multicultural, beloved community where all who enter feel they belong and know they are loved. Thank you.
I have my papers this time. Some of us aren't meant to belong. Some of us have to turn the world upside down and shake the hell out of it until we make our own place in it. Elizabeth Lowell. When I was growing up, I was weird. Now, hold on, I know. I'm still weird, but give me a minute. To begin with, I was always taller than the other kids. They had to put me in the back row in class photos so I didn't overshadow anyone. I was always too loud. I said things that never made any sense to anyone but me. There was always something off about me. I love to sing. I love to dance. I'm always walking too fast, moving too much. People always wanted me to stop singing, stop dancing, slow down. Where do you have to be anyway? My parents never knew what to do with me. I was way too curious, always asking questions they didn't have the answers to. I don't blame them. I was insatiable. We didn't have Google or Wikipedia when I was growing up. My parents had to resort to weekly trips to the library for stacks of books on everything, massive encyclopedias on any subject imaginable, and sets of brain teaser trivia games. This isn't to say, of course, that I didn't have any friends. I did, but they never got me either. They got annoyed at my full-throated singing in the car to literally every song that I knew the lyrics to, which was most of them. When I got really excited about something, I moved in a way that reminds one of wagging their tail, which they thought was silly, of course. But on top of this was my most egregious sin of all. The idea that maybe the world was interesting and beautiful, that humans were fascinating and good, and that things could be made better than they are. That maybe, just maybe, we could change things for the better. How silly of me. Haven't I watched the news? Didn't I come of age in the era of 9/11, the global war on terror, the climate crisis? What could possibly be good and decent and worth saving about any of this? Eventually, the negativity won out. You can only listen to people tell you the same thing over and over and over again for so long until eventually, no matter how strong you are, you think, maybe they're right. Maybe I am weird and naive and silly. Maybe I should just give up, become like everybody else. Maybe I should just hide. So that's what I did. I hid for years. At first, behind a mask I had created, and then eventually behind a screen. I stayed home more and more. I talked to people less and less. I stopped going outside at all. When the pandemic hit, it changed everything for everyone except for me. I never went anywhere, so being quarantined was just another day for me. But eventually, as all things do, this period of isolation ended. On the other side, I was left with a fresh start brought about by some massive shifts in my life, including the death of my mom, which, while heartbreaking, left me with a new sense of freedom. I'd had enough of hiding. My sister put it as starting a new page in my book of life. I told her it was more like beginning an entirely new volume. There was no one left to tell me how to dress, what to do with my hair, what to think, how to feel, how to act, who to love. So, I headed back to the one place I had always found myself, Fresno. Even though I was born and raised in Kingsburg, I never belonged there. I never knew what it was like to love the place that you're from, to fit into a community. Finally, I do. I recognize people everywhere I go, people who are glad to see me and who I'm glad to see. I'm beginning to know my way around, my favorite little places. I'm proud to call myself a tower rat. I finally have friends and family who love me for who I am. People that love my joy, my hope, my hugs. They love to hear me sing. They love to watch me dance. They're always surprised and delighted by something new they learn about me. They love my curiosity. They're always wondering what I'm going to do next. And now so am I. I finally built the kind of belonging that I always needed. I finally found my home. Thank you.
Ooh, I gotta follow those two. All right, I'm usually not talking up here, so anyway, several months ago, Jody asked me to talk about belonging today. I agreed, even though I wasn't really sure I was qualified to talk about it. To be honest, I don't think I've experienced belonging the way that I imagine that most people do. And by most people, I mean, people who were born and raised in the same city or even the same country for most of their lives. My experience, by the time I was 10 years old, I had lived in 4 different countries, 7 different cities, had to go to 6 different schools, and had learned how to speak 3 different languages. And that doesn't include all the in-between travel we had to do as well. And it all sounds great on paper, like a big adventure, but in reality, it was pretty lonely. I was constantly the new girl. I didn't speak the language, I dressed weird, I smelled weird, I ate weird things. And every time we moved, I would get bullied all the time, a lot. And I was told by a lot of people that I didn't belong. One of those times is when I was 4. I went to a playground with my grandma in California, and this Caucasian lady who was older told me that I wasn't allowed to be there because I wasn't American, and she was going to call the cops on us. I know. The people there immediately shut it down, and to their credit. But, for the longest time, I was terrified to go outside of the house. As a Burmese person, even Burmese people will test my Burmese-ness. Because, I didn't grow up in Burma, so they'd see if I'd eat, traditional Burmese foods, which can be kind of stinky, which I do, by the way. They'd test whether I speak Burmese correctly using the correct honorifics, and my grandparents made sure that I spoke it at home, so I still do. It continues to be a hoop that I jump through every time I meet Burmese people. Now, if you're wondering, the reason why I grew up moving around the globe is because my grandparents and I were refugees. The country I'm from, Myanmar, is one of those countries right now that are on the travel ban list. The Burmese government didn't like that my grandfather would speak his mind or write critiques about them. It seems like authoritarian governments don't like being criticized. Anyway, so if we had gone back home, we would probably have been imprisoned, at least my grandparents would have. Also, when I was around 5 years old, I found out that my father was now in political prison because he dared to run against the current government, and he was part of the party that was voted in. So their response was to throw them all in jail, or kill them, or exile them. So it wasn't safe for us to return, and we went from country to country as we tried to find a place that would accept us. Now, as a kid, I didn't fully understand what being stateless would have meant. I am forever grateful, though, that back in the day, the U.S. was still a country that welcomed the poor, the tired, and the hungry that landed here. Given my experiences, my sense of belonging is now defined more by the universal human experience, one that transcends language, religion, social mores, and tribalism. Having grown up the way I did, I noticed that regardless of language or culture, once I got to know people, we all really just want the same thing. We all have the same problems, the same joys, the same flaws and strengths. We all have inherent worth and dignity. I think we truly all fit into something bigger and timeless, and it breaks my heart that we use division to create a narrowly defined unity. And, the sad reality is that nothing brings people together more quickly than having a common enemy, and we can see how people use that to their advantage, right? The downside of doing that is that we make enemies when we could have found common ground instead. And I say this as someone who became friends with quite a few of those kids who started off as my bullies. Anytime I moved, even though I'd start out as the weird girl, I would eventually make friends. And everywhere I went, even to this day, my first friend was usually a cat. Cats didn't care what I wore. They didn't care what I ate or what language I spoke. They all kind of speak the same language no matter where you go to. No matter what, within days of my arrival, a cat would saunter up to me and I'd have a new bestie. They'd just find me, I swear, even to this day, okay? They'll show up in my car, in my backyard. It's all over the place. It's like they know. Also, without fail, as I made friends with the feline, a fellow cat lover would come up to us, and regardless of language barrier, I'd have new friends. That was a way to bond. And in fact, I knew I belonged at this church when Prince, our resident kitty, welcomed me on my first service here. Yeah. So as we consider how we build belonging, I hope we remember that cats, masters at taking their inherent worth and dignity as foregone conclusions, don't care what language you speak, how you worship, what you wear, your socioeconomic status, none of that matters to them. And maybe it shouldn't to us either. Thank you.